All right, so this video is going to cover chapter 24.1 and 24.2. So really just an intro into the digestive system. So a couple things to keep in mind as we get started, right? You are a heterotroph, okay? This means that you have to consume other organisms, right? You get your nutrients from the environment by consuming others. You don't get to do photosynthesis. You don't get to provide your own energy that way, right? And the thing to keep in mind here is when we talk about these nutrients that we get through eating, they're really serving two main purposes for us. So one, you are going to take these compounds and you're going to tear them apart, right? You're going to do a series of catabolic reactions that are exergonic, right? They release energy. And so you're going to break food down in order to get energy from it. Now, the energy you get from that can be used for lots of different things. And we'll talk more about these processes in chapter 25 in metabolism. The nutrients can also become the raw materials so that you can synthesize new compounds, right? So part of eating, say proteins, is to get the individual amino acids. And then inside of your cells, you're going to recombine them into the proteins that you want, right? So you do a series of anabolic reactions to make more complex molecules. And keep in mind, anabolic reactions are endergonic. They require energy. Where do you get that energy? From the catabolic reactions where we're breaking food down to get the energy, right? So they're very much connected. We'll also see that the digestive system is going to work hand in hand with the cardiovascular system, right? We need the blood to transport the organic molecules that we absorb to the cells, right? Whether it's for the fuel to run cellular respiration and get energy, or if it's for the building blocks, things like amino acids, so they can make the proteins they need, right? So it's going to be the blood that transports the majority of those nutrients. We'll also use the lymphatic system a little bit, right? During absorption of fats, actually those lipids go directly into the lymphatic system rather than the hepatic portal vein. So there's the lymphatic system again. Okay, so let's take a peek at a little bit of anatomy here. So you may notice that we are going to really split the organs of the digestive tract and accessory organs. So when we talk about the digestive system, or maybe the GI tract, right? The gastrointestinal tract. We're really referring to the tube, right? That goes from your mouth all the way down, squiggles around for a while, and eventually comes out the anus, right? So there is a tube from your mouth to your anus, and this is kind of strange, right? It's open to the outside world on both ends. And so in a way, it's not really inside of you, right? It's just this in-pocketing. Anyway, so when we talk about the GI tract, it is that tube, the gastrointestinal tract, or the really old name, the alimentary canal, right? It's going to start here at the oral cavity, right? So we have that tube, the oral cavity. It goes into the pharynx. Remember, we share parts of the pharynx, at least, with the respiratory system. Food is then going to travel down the esophagus, into the stomach, right, onto the small intestine. And the small intestine really comes in three parts, the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Maybe you can come up with a fun mnemonic to remember the order that those go in, but through the small intestine, then through the large intestine, and again, that's where we're going to exit. So that is the GI tract. Now, we have some accessory organs where they're not technically, right, this tube, but they're going to be super important in digestion. And so you see them listed here. Actually, the teeth and the tongue should be over here with accessory organs, right? They're in the oral cavity, but I would definitely consider those accessory organs. Salivary glands. Right, so we have a series of salivary glands that are going to help us moisten the food so we can swallow it. I shouldn't go into details yet. The liver is going to be an accessory gland. It has so many functions in the digestive tract. That's going to be a big one in this chapter. The gallbladder, storing bile and secreting bile when it's needed, and then the pancreas. Now we already talked about the pancreas, right? The pancreas is part of the endocrine system, but it's also part of the digestive system. In fact, remember its main role, 99% of what the pancreas does, is produce digestive enzymes, components that are going to be dumped into the GI tract. So we get to talk about the pancreas again. Okay, so those are kind of your major components, and we will break that down and go more into it. But really, the last thing I want to think about in this short video is what the function of the digestive system is. And I would say it has a variety of functions, and some of that kind of depends where you are along the GI tract. So obviously, one of the main things we do is ingestion. So using the oral cavity, the teeth, the tongue, in order to get food into this tube to start with. A couple key things to keep in mind here. This is an active process, right? It requires choice. And so you're getting motor commands from the cerebral cortex saying yes, right? Grab another forkful of pasta and shove it down the gullet, right? So ingestion is active and it does require choice. And there's some really interesting theories. What was that book? Omnivore's Dilemma. If you've read any Michael Pollan, Omnivore's Dilemma was one of his earlier books, and he makes the argument, right, that as omnivores, right, so we can eat meat, plants, right, a variety of things, that we had a lot of choices to make, and he thinks that that actually is part of what kind of fueled the expansion of our brains. Anyway. Okay, another important function in the digestive system is going to be mechanical processing, right? So it varies a little bit depending where you are, right? The teeth are being used for tearing and mashing. By the time we get down into the stomach, right, the stomach is mixing and churning, and really, right, mechanical digestion, starting to break this food apart, really in those physical manners. We also do chemical digestion, and a lot of this takes place in the stomach, but also quite a bit in the large intestine. So in the stomach, we'll look at a series of enzymes, lots of hydrochloric acid to help with that chemical breakdown. In the intestines, though, we still continue chemical digestion, particularly with a lot of enzymes, right? And so when you think about chemical digestion, right, these are those part of those catabolic reactions. We're taking the protein, right, the chicken that you ate, and we want to rip it into individual amino acids, right? We want to take the triglycerides, right, the fats that were in the meat or the cheese that was on top of your burger, right? I guess we were doing chicken. The fat that's in the chicken, the skin. You want to take a triglyceride and break it down into individual fatty acids. And you want to take carbohydrates in the breading on your chicken, right? And you need to actually break the carbohydrates into glucose. So this digestion, obviously mechanical digestion helps get small enough pieces, but then the chemical digestion is really taking us down to that monomer level. And you need to be that small to get absorbed in the small intestine. So digestion, it's called the digestive system. So digestion is important here. Maybe less intuitively, we'll talk about there's a big function in the digestive system that is secretion. So all along, right, maybe the first place we see that are these salivary glands where we're secreting fluids into the digestive tract. So made up of things like water and enzymes, buffers, salts, right? These fluids coming in from salivary glands being produced and pushed into the stomach as stomach acids, right? There's a lot of secretion that happens along the length of this. Number one, most important thing that the digestive system does is the absorption of nutrients, right? Everything else it does is pointless unless we have a way to actually get those molecules across the epithelium. Most of this is going to take place in the small intestine. And then finally, elimination or excretion, right? How do we actually remove the waste products, everything that we didn't need and no longer want? And that, of course, is through defecation. We won't go into great detail on that portion of how things work. Okay, so those are really the big functions. We'll see you in the next video.